500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Cause I see you.
Hey. Welcome everybody to the 500 and Growing podcast. I am your host, Jesus Azteca Sanchez, and today we welcome Kirk Spencer. Has done electronic music. He works with disadvantaged youth and people in the UK. He got a scholarship
just called the Roosevelt Travelling Memorial Scholarship. Yeah, it's a really interesting travelling memorial scholarship scheme that's been going around since, instead of, with the President Roosevelt and his efforts in the war, instead of creating a kind of statue of President Roosevelt, they actually decided to create something that's a little bit more long lasting and created this travelling memorial scholarship. So it's awesome. So it's been going since 1950 and there's been over, a lot of different scholars, but it's a very competitive thing to do. So every year they send 2 scholars over to the US to research their chosen field and then also connect with Americans and soak up the American way of life, bring those findings back to Nottingham to help Nottingham and help the person who's gone away. So,
and how long are you in the United States?
So I've been in, so far I've been here about 3 weeks, but the total of my stay here is 6 weeks. So I was in LA for almost 2 weeks, and then I've been in Chicago for about less than a week now. And there's already so many opportunities. And then I'm going to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta I'm going to New York, and then New York home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but already I've been blown away by just the level of. It does feel like what people say. This is the land of opportunity.
Okay.
From an outside point of view.
Sure.
When you're in a different country, you hear this from immigrant families, right? They're more aware, they don't take things for granted, right? And I experienced that when I first lived in London, but then being in LA, I experienced that as well, just soaking up every single opportunity that I can. Yeah. And I was able to, the first week go to a really cool movie producers party who's quite high up in a production music, a film production company.
Sure.
Meet a whole bunch of interesting people. That leads to another thing and then another thing.
Yeah, it must be really adventurous.
It's 100% adventurous, and there's just some incredible people that have just inspired me and want to work with me on songs and films as well. So some of those people I've been able to work with in the past. A really great director I've been able to connect with while I'm out here is called Gille Klabin, and he's done a film called The Wave, which had Justin Long and Donald Faison in there. I don't know if I'm saying his second name right, but yeah, awesome film. And we've worked on various different projects. I had 7 of my songs in his film and then composed the trailer music for his film.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, and so that's what I've done already. And then we were able to reconnect, and it's looking like there's going to be some other, composing opportunities for me as we've worked on some composing work.
Well, let's get started.
Yeah.
Right? Where did you grow up, and what was it like? If you can the picture, have the audience understand how it smelled, all those things.
I like that, yeah. So I grew up in a place called Nottingham, and Nottingham is it's a melting pot of different cultures, and I went from a small village in Cotgrave when I was younger to a kind of nicer village, I would say, called Radcliffe-on-Trent. And that village was great because there was a lot of bands and a lot of people experimenting with music.
Sure.
So I was able to, I wanted to be a rock star. I had my guitar and I had flowers that I was taking pictures with, almost like a Guns N' Roses type thing. Okay. As a teenager that my friends laugh at still to this day. And that's kind of what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be in a Guns N' Roses type band, but me and my brother, who was 4 years younger than me, were in a band together with another really good friend and a bassist as well. So we were practicing in our garage, getting complaints from the neighbor, who then eventually got sent down for growing cannabis in his garage, but we won't go into that. But yeah, so just next door that was going on while we were doing our music thing, and he was complaining to us. But anyway, it's that's kind of the environment that we grew up. And then when I was in school, there was this incredible program that was advertised through the local kind of music class that I was in, and it was to go work in a community recording studio, not work, but to collaborate on a different project. And that was one of the life-changing moments, I think, because I went from being in like a band, and I was still in a band when we went there, but we were collaborating with rappers, we were collaborating with...
Well, let's slow down.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about like what it was like to be a little kid?
Oh, right, even further.
Do you have brothers and sisters? Like what's your family composition like?
Yeah, so I've got a brother who's 4 years younger. Okay. And growing up, I think I had a good childhood for sure. And, speaking to my partner, she says, no one can take that away from you. Yeah. Which is a very good thing to have. I think gives you the foundation, I think. But, there was issues along the way for sure. I think as a kid growing up, I would always use my imagination. I'd be playing with my toys for forever. Sure. I'd be using my imagination to, play with the little figurines, and there was a whole storyline. And if my brother came into my room, I'd be very annoyed that he'd maybe mess with my toys. Mm-hmm. But luckily, throughout all of my childhood, everything was filmed as well. So it was around about the time where the VHS recorders were there. So
you're talking about the bazooka?
Yeah, pretty much. I never saw the actual bazooka. It might have been a smaller one. I don't fully know. Okay. We still have the footage, and I've digitized it.
Beautiful.
But
and do you look at that footage at all?
Occasionally, like once every 10 years. But not. I've actually got footage from. Yeah, so that was my dad capturing that 0 to, let's say, and then obviously cameras changed.
When were you born?
I was born 4th of the 4th, 1990.
1990?
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Okay.
Yeah, and 4 is my lucky number. My son was born on the 4th of December.
Wow.
Obviously the 2-4, and then it's also my partner's lucky number. But,
wow.
So that's the kind of environment of... So working class environment. My dad was a civil engineer, and my mum was a hairdresser. Okay. And then she a few years later became a yoga teacher. So we were we're in a good situation, and then we moved, and then my parents split up. So
what was your relationship like with your dad? Because
not
now
all the time.
It's ubiquitous.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So now we film, like I was asking because I'm always filming my children like doing crazy things, right? Or like doing the jungle gym, or like yesterday.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter climbed a wall. You know how they have the little walls on the playgrounds?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, man, when you started talking about your parents filmed you from the age of 0 until they didn't, like, I imagine that wasn't commonplace.
Definitely wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't even my dad's camera. I don't even think my dad could, afford a camera. His friend actually just let him use the camera, which in these days, it'd be almost like lending out your 3K DSLR to someone to film their kids, which is quite rare, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But luckily he did, and because a lot of other people don't have that kind of footage, and I can kind of see my memories are blurred between the footage of obviously the young age and then my memories.
For sure. I mean, we talk about that a lot on the podcast with past guests as far as the subconscious and what we do with our subconscious.
Yeah.
So our subconscious erases or alleviates your brain of like certain memories that you may have so that you can grow past them. But, eventually you have to come to terms with them, or else it's going to be something that is going to be part of your decision making that you don't know is part of your subconscious. So we've had those conversations before. What was your relationship like with your dad? And then I have another question to follow that up with.
Yeah, well, I think my relationship's always been quite good. I remember falling out with him as a kid, and running away from home to the treehouse in the garden, and my mum giving me sandwiches through the window. I think my relationship was good, you know. I think, we had a good relationship. My dad's always been there, so yeah.
What about with your mom?
Yeah, great with my mum as well. My mum is, hardworking.
And she was giving you the sandwiches.
Exactly, yeah. She kept me alive without those sandwiches. Very blessed, I think, with my mum and dad. Although, they split up. For me, I always saw that as a positive.
Okay.
The arguments that you get and seeing your parents go through that is, negative, right? And it can impact you. And I remember being at an age where I could think, they should just not be together.
Sure.
But so, my mum actually came out as gay. And again, I saw that as a positive. As a young man, a 14-year-old man, or maybe I was 13, maybe I was 12. I remember being happy that my mum was gay because there wouldn't be another man in the house. You don't want it. Not that I'm like an alpha male type person, but you just, it just felt, I'd still think the same thing to this day.
And for your mom, it must have been like a load off her.
Exactly.
Of her back to like live a life.
Yes.
Where you're not really 100%. There.
Exactly. It's a different time as well, where you couldn't really come out, and then times changed. I guess it's the same in the US as well.
Yeah. How's your relationship with your brother?
My brother always wanted to be my age. So
you always wanted to be more grown.
Yeah, of course, right? You always want to hang out with the older kids. You always want to do the cool things, right?
Yeah.
But I always wanted to, in my mind, protect him from the naughty stuff that we used to do as kids. So that was one reason I didn't want him to kind of play with us. So I would always kind of have that separation, which if I could go back now and say, try and include him, I would have done that. I definitely regret not being there more for my brother because it was, we had about 10 years from 20 to 30 with my brother where he was not in a good place. But I don't think it's my fault, but I think I've had a role to play. But when he was 12, he was also like drinking. I was 16, so I was drinking. Mm-hmm. In the UK, we drink, we drink a decent amount.
Sure.
Even at that age. So that was always annoying to me that a 12-year-old was drinking. And I never wanted him to be drinking at that age. But
for sure,
that was just the environment that we kind of grew up in the UK, where it's quite common. But if you have I think my parents were quite relaxed at that time, and they didn't really know what he was doing.
Sure.
So that was not a nice thing to experience as a brother who cares for your brother. But there's nothing I could also do as well.
Yeah, you have to let people grow and live. But
growing up, I didn't really. Those kind of things weren't there. I really wanted to. At a young age, I had this idea of doing music and creating music, and then just the power of a dream.
Yeah,
and that dream has just kept me going since 14, so that's always been the thing that I wanted to change, was my life through music. Sure. And also other people's life through music, more as a team at that point, when I'm 16.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then that eventually changed the older I've got.
Did you ever have to like stick up for yourself?
Oh, for sure.
Younger? Like what was that like?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I wasn't bullied too much until I got into secondary school, which was like 12 to 16, and had fights, but I made friends with the people I had fights with in isolation class. Mm-hmm. So that was great, and I'm still really good friends with one of my friends who I had a fight with.
Yeah.
A guy called Korosh. So shout out to Korosh, and we're good friends. But then at some point, I had a fight with this other kid. I won't say his name. And then I completely, dealt him a bad hand, you know what I'm saying? And
sure.
But then his guy who was like a little bit older wanted to then fight me.
Yeah.
As almost like
defend his name.
Exactly. But this guy was a little bit crazy. I would never use a weapon or anything like that. But this guy would have probably used a metal pole, or knives weren't really.
Yeah, he wasn't a fair fighter.
Exactly, he wasn't a fair fighter, and there would have been two of them as well.
Yeah.
So for about a week or two, I think I got chased home every day, which was annoying. And then, my dad managed to put a stop to that.
For me, it was, racism. Chicago or the United States is very different. We have different ethnicities, and especially Chicago in general. I would say, because I know that it's different in other places. Like in New York, you have the black people that live with the Puerto Ricans. The Puerto Ricans live with the Dominicans. They all live together, and they all have like a communal experience. Yeah. In Chicago, we're very segregated, and so what that means is, there's two sides to the city. There's the north side, the south side, and some people say the west side, right? Yeah. But south side is very, very, it's working class, and it's very segregated. Wow. Typically. So what you'll have is enclaves of like white people that live together. Yeah. The white neighborhoods. You'll have Mexican people that live together. Yeah. Or Mexicanos, right? That live together. And that's where I come from. So I grew up in Little Village. Little Village is a community on the southwest side of Chicago. Wow. Right. And then you have the south side, the far south side, which are African American communities, right? Mm-hmm. And then the north side is a little different because you'll have neighbors that are like, I have a neighbor that's Indian. I have neighbors that are African Americans. So it's a different experience out here. But Chicago has typically been known as a very segregated city, or one of the most segregated cities in the world. Wow. And so for me, in my experience, but we had racist sentiments at times that were shown for black people. And I got into hip hop when I was the age that you were talking about, like that flourishing 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. Got into hip hop really heavily, started breakdancing, I started emceeing, I started producing music, right? And so I hung out with, hip hop gave me an opportunity to be able to break those barriers. So Chicago is built where there are viaducts that divide community. And so what ends up happening is you're told at a young age, don't go across that viaduct. Wow. Because if you go across that viaduct, the black people are going to do something to you. And the black community has that said to them by their own, right? Don't go over to the Mexican side of the viaduct because something will happen to you. So we have communities that live right next to each other that are separated by viaducts that have never met each other really, and don't really integrate or don't really share, space. It's like I stay in my side, you stay in your side. And so there were times where, people were like, yo, Jesus, why you trying to be black, bro? And I'd be like, man, I know more about my culture than you do. What are you talking about trying to be black, right? Like I've studied, indigenous history and Mesoamerican history. So it's like, I know what I'm talking about. But it was also that sentiment of like, yo, why you trying to be black, or why you trying to be different, or what? But hip hop did that for me. It opened up all these walls because I was going to the south side, to Inglewood, to a function, right? I was coming over here to the north side or to the northeast side to different parties and stuff like that. I was breakdancing on the southeast side, right? I was breaking at the point, the promontory point. And so it was just like I got an experience, and everybody that was there, like when you were in hip hop, it was just like you were a good breakdancer. So it was just like, or a b-boy, you were a good b-boy or a b-girl, and you'd be like, yo, respect. And it didn't matter what color you were or what language you spoke. If you were dope, you were dope. And so there were times where I was in the middle of dinner, of like Thanksgiving dinner, where the whole family's together and somebody's saying something that's not, that's racist. I would stand up and be like, yo, I don't appreciate what you're saying. Now, as a young boy, that really didn't go off really well,
Oh,
right?
shit, yeah.
Because it's just like you're calling out your uncles or your aunts or whoever was saying it, right? And they're just like, who are you? You know, and so it sends you in a sense of like, those were some things that were when I started going out into the world and experiencing things that I was willing to stand up for, right? I was just like, yo, this is what you're saying. I don't want to be around this.
Yeah.
You know, is there anything growing up for you that you had to stand up for like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, so, I remember someone standing up for, so I must have got some sort of racist stuff from maybe my parents or someone, because that's usually where you get it from when you're 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
I must have said something like, and we had an amazing breakdancer as well, who was a black guy, who was the caretaker of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I must have said something, and he pulled me aside. He made me wait for, felt like it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he was going to say something. And whatever he said, just it kind of changed my view I don't actually know what he said. So he obviously changed my opinion from when I was 12 to not say anything like that. And then it just kind of changed my perspective. And going into school, our school was quite multicultural. Not like definitely not as much as the US.
Yeah. What was the makeup like at your school?
I would say it was probably 70% white.
Okay.
Or maybe 60%, probably 60%. We had an influx and just an incredible melting pot of different cultures for the 40% as well. So
yeah, what were those?
I guess
those
black,
like?
mainly black, and that's it. Yeah, maybe 70%. Yeah, and we had an amazing ping pong player who was from London, and we became friends, and then he became a national ping pong player.
Wow, that's cool.
And my partner,
man, have you seen them? They're like, they got that backspin. It's crazy.
Exactly, yeah.
The Olympics I saw is like crazy.
Exactly. And this guy was then on a Coca-Cola ad with Mark Ronson, so he did well.
Wow.
And then we had a whole bunch of different people, and it just, I think, when you grow up with around different cultures that's not segregated at school,
yeah,
it just completely for me just dissolved any of that stuff that I might have heard from maybe parents or I don't know, just other people. Cottgrave, the village that I did grow up in initially, is quite racist.
Sure.
Because it's mainly white.
Sure.
And yeah, so that caretaker kind of changed my viewpoint. And then when I was 16, I had the opportunity to go to this community recording studio,
mm-hmm.
and that was even more a melting pot, and that was probably 20% white people and 80% black people.
Wow. Okay, so you were the other.
Exactly. But it was a beautiful place. Obviously, I experienced a little bit of racism to me, but more as a joke, like, you look a white boy. I mean,
yeah. And just out of curiosity,
yeah.
like, you said black people. What were like? Where are the
Jamaican,
black people from?
Yeah, Jamaica, a little bit of Africa, a little bit Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah. So my girlfriend, my partner,
wow.
She went to my school, and we've been together for 17 years. But she went to our school from 12 to 16, so she's mixed race.
Okay.
From a little bit of Caribbean and a little bit of white. So it felt like a bit of a melting pot. More at this studio for me to experience new cultures. I know sometimes Indian composers and producers who would pass through the studio as well. And
sure.
all of these things inspired me as a 16-year-old to, that was when I really was interested in, like world music and just new sounds.
Yeah.
But luckily I kind of grew up listening to BBC Asia Network,
mm-hmm.
which was, well, not BBC Asia Network, a show on BBC Radio 1 that was two Asian DJs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would I remember it was definitely a turning point. I put the dial of the radio somehow in between pop music and this show.
Sure.
And so it did a mashup.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if you can do that, but I'm pretty sure you can, like going between two stations. I was like, this is really cool.
Man.
And then the older I got, there was actually shows that did that kind of music that would mash up, Indian classical with hip hop. And I always felt that was an interesting mashup, because my mum then became a yoga teacher, so we had a lot of like Ravi Shankar CDs, and my dad was into Ravi Shankar as well. So we kind of grew up with a lot of different inspiration. And then as a 16-year-old going through the college collection of CDs, there's so many different styles of music that you've never experienced before. So that was,
Yeah, man. I mean, you mentioned your parents right now, and it's just like one recorded you from the age of 0.
Oh yeah.
And then the other one became like a yoga instructor. And so, yogis are very interesting because they study the body, right? They are in contact with their body. They stretch their body.
Yeah.
And so she had to have had like an alternative way of thinking as well.
And she did that when we were like maybe 14. So she went on the course, and and that's a hard thing to do when you've got kids, is to train up. So shout out to all the single parents who are doing it as well. For
sure. So you were raised by a single
No.
mom,
We were like split between after they split up. So
okay.
that was good. The only thing is, if your guitar was in one house, and
you had to wait.
Yeah. Like luckily they were in the same village for a while, so it wasn't that bad. But it's just, you get annoyed that maybe your t-shirt that you want to wear when you go out is in the other house. But apart from that, you have two spaces really.
And the fact that you saw it as a positive thing, right? Like
I did. Yeah, I don't know how much my brother did, and I never really had that conversation too much with him. But maybe he's at a younger age as well. So when it happened, when you're at a younger age, I think those things can impact you a little bit more heavily. You haven't you're still developing your brain until you're like 24 or something like that. So I think it had a bad
you
impact.
might have been able to understand what was happening a little bit more than he would.
100%. Yeah, I think so. So it was real great place to grow up. I mean, I think whatever I would have said would have changed my path, and I'm pretty happy with the path that I'm on. Although I would have liked to go back to a different age and said maybe have a backup plan, because the music avenue is up and down. But I think emotionally, if I were to go back, I think I dealt with it pretty well. I didn't hold on to anything from that era that I could think of. And the more, obviously, if I spoke to a psychologist or something, I'm sure they would say, you could have maybe done this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But there's nothing that sticks out. Apart from, I wish that I would have pushed myself a little bit younger, in terms of my craft even more, and just seeing, I've got a friend who trains his daughter, and she's a gymnast, and seeing how he trains her and gives her the skills in life to flourish, right? So visualization, positive affirmations, and dedication in the craft. I wish I'd pushed myself a little bit more.
Though maybe that program that you were talking about, and we'll talk about that, is like it attracted you because it's like they'll have like producing workshops here to get the youth interested in doing something and get them out of the streets, right?
Yeah. That's kind of similar to what it was. Without that, my journey would have, I don't know where my journey would have gone. That was a ultimate shift, because that was when I saw someone, on the computer making music, and then everyone going crazy in the room. And it took a while to get to that level where, because it was hip hop, and mainly UK grime at that point that was being made in the studio. So I wanted to then become that guy. And then I kind of learnt the skills from him, watched him, and he kind of mentored me, like a few of the producers as well. And then I was able to kind of get to that level where I could create interesting songs with rappers. And but that was, a long journey of first writing songs with rappers and singers on guitar rather than in the band.
So you play guitar?
Yeah, play guitar. Yeah, that's my first instrument. When
did you start playing the guitar?
14. And I think there's a lot better guitarists out there than myself, but I have a good ability of being able to translate an emotion that I'm feeling or that someone else is feeling into an idea. and that's what I got good at when I was there, and I still use that to this
Those
day.
skills, right?
Yeah, being able to translate emotion into sound and riffs, ideas that could then be used as music. So that's but then engineering, learning about the mics, learning about the level, learning about EQ and compression and mixing, and then eventually producing. In fact, no, producing first and then mixing, and just that journey, it started to activate a deep sense of like wanting to learn, which I didn't have at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think the school system needs to be overturned in the UK. It's just like up until that point, I wasn't going unless I had like homework that I had to do that was set that you'd get detention if you didn't do. I wasn't going out and learning too much in my own time, but with guitar and then engineering and producing, it's just that was what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do from 14, and I wish that the school system was a bit more set up personally for one-to-one, but that's what homeschooling is.
Yeah.
Although you still have to do a certain curriculum
Sure.
with homeschooling, but I think it should be music. If you choose music, you can then learn about the history of music.
Mm-hmm.
You can then learn about the geography of music. And then my dad disagrees, but I think that would be a great way, because then you'd go more into detail on the geography, looking at different places and the math side of the business, the royalties. It's everything. Yeah,
it creates intrinsic motivation, right?
100%.
So I used to be a educator as well. I used to be a teacher, and so it's like forcing the youth to all have a cookie cutter experience robs so many kids of being able to flourish.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really got into before I left teaching was inquiry-based learning.
Oh.
Inquiry-based learning is pretty much you develop as a student, you develop a question and you try to answer it like you're talking about. So like you want to play the guitar?
Yeah.
Okay, so play the guitar. Where did the guitar come from?
Yeah.
How was it invented? What are the acoustics? What are the physics behind how the sound reverberates, right? And so I think that if the school systems incorporated that, not only would it be better for the teacher too, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that the cookie cutter way of thinking just hasn't worked for certain students, me being one of them.
Same for me as well.
For me, I started drawing.
Yeah.
And so like I drew, and that's what took up my time. And so, family parties, I'd be in the corner drawing, right?
Nice.
In school, in English class, I'd be drawing, right? In math class, I'd be drawing. Now, I wasn't a rude student, so I was like nice and polite. But during parent-teacher conference, mom would be like, or the teacher would be like, he's a nice boy, but he doesn't do any of his work. And, he's really intelligent. And if only he put his effort to his work like he does for his drawings, he'd be a straight A student. And I'd come home with like the grading scale here is A, B, C, D, F. I would come home with C's and D's and sometimes F's, right? And so my mom would be really hard on me because of it. But it's also, there's also a type of curriculum that is taught in the primary levels, so the young ages, that is very not interesting, right? Like when you read a history book and you don't see anybody that looks like you inside that history book as being intelligent, as being a person that contributed to a positive history, or you see one person or you see just three people and everybody else is white, it makes you be like, yo, I don't want to read this book.
Yeah.
I don't find any interest in it. But so I was that student that didn't do well in school. But like you and your experience, when you went to that program, What was that program called, by the way?
That was called the Community Recording Studios. So
who ran it?
Legendary two figures. There was a guy called Big Trev or Trevor Rose, and then another guy called Nick Says.
Okay.
And yeah, they would push me to, learn certain things.
Dope.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I got a job at a cafe, and I got it sophomore year of school. So I had to have been like 15, 16 around there. And there were students or fellow coworkers that were going to the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a really big art school, right? So people come from out of state to go to that school. It's like a very well-known school for art. And so they would go to record in the recording studio of that school. They were hip hoppers, right? So they were MCs, producers, and they would use the Art Institute facilities to record their music. So while they were recording their music, it's kind of like what you were talking about. Like I would just be in the cut or in the back watching everything happen. And sometimes they would let me get on the mic, and sometimes they would let me produce. And man, I was a toy, what we call a toy, right? Like just like a person. Like I hear some of those recordings, I still have them. And I cringe when I hear them because I'm just like, man, I was so bad. But they were so cool to like let me experience that. So because it's an art school, one of the fondest memories that I have is like every year while I worked at that place for like 3 years, we would go, and maybe even after that, we would go to a Halloween party. Now, all these kids are art students, but like the top-notch art students, they're the people who get recruited from like out of state to come. So it's just like, it's like a hub of like incredible artists. All their costumes were ridiculous. And so at the party that we would go to, they would open up the night to freestyle. So this crew called Blunt City Crew from Florida, which were a lot of kids that came from Florida to the Art Institute, would like get on the mic and freestyle, and then they would pass it to me and be like, yo, get up. And so it just like motivated me to like really dive into my craft. And around that age, around like 20, I bought my first computer, which was like around 99.
99, well.
Yeah, it was a compact computer. Yeah. And so I learned how to produce music through this program called Acid.
Acid, yeah. Made by Sony? No?
Man, I don't remember who it was made by. But I know that it was a PC program.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a Mac program. And so, yeah, man, I learned how to do beats using Acid, and then eventually like got into, making beats, and now I make beats on live, like we were talking about.
Live,
Appleton. Yeah. And so there's that commonality in the story. You talked about how you fell in love. You fell in love by seeing these people in their program, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Never wanted to be a engineer. Never wanted to be a mixing engineer. Never wanted to be a producer. Never really wanted to be a composer. But seeing them work was like, oh wow, that's so. It felt more innovative than a traditional band setup, and it felt like definitely there was more possibilities for pushing the envelope further in terms of sound design with a computer than a guitar. Jimi Hendrix is most likely not going to be beat on his sound. There's only one new guitarist who I've heard in the last 10 years, a new guy called McGee, who's doing something that's slightly different, and he's just come out with a new album this year that Eric Clapton and people are saying this is good, but everyone else who sounds slightly different is usually using a laptop and experimenting with different things. Although I do think we've hit the ceiling of a sound design in 2024. At that point, there was ultimate possibilities around about 2009 for like innovation and programming, and it was just a beautiful time to get into it. Although, like what you're saying with your recordings, my recordings were 100% trash. I do believe you have to do the 10,000 hours thing of continually making tracks. And even now, it's like I'm a little bit rusty. I've been traveling for a bit.
Yeah.
And even before then, I was not in the studio. So you have to, it's like being at the gym.
Sure.
which I'm also rusty at. Like I've only worked out 3 times since I've been in the US.
Oh, wow.
And usually I'm
Yeah.
like a 5 times or 4 times a week kind of person.
Oh man, so you're
So-
like avid.
Yeah. I know I'll be like starting back again.
Ooh, you're gonna be sore.
Gonna be sore, but also it's be like starting back again.
Yeah,
Same
no
with
stamina.
the music, but sometimes you have to take the break to do certain things,
For sure.
and experience certain things, which is going to give you the inspiration to, create, and then also get to go to the gym. So yeah, it's been nice, but yeah, I think going back to learning that software, that was life changing. I learned Logic first, and then from Logic I was able to I ended up volunteering at the studio after I finished college, and for about a year. So I was teaching how to use the software. So it was like a continually evolving kind of system where one person would show you how to use the software, and then you would show someone else how to use the software, and then they would show, and it's just a big circle effect.
Yeah.
And so then I did that for about, I was able to use their studio for free, recorded some tracks. Some of the tracks started to get known and go on the radio, like BBC Radio 1, with other artists that I'd produced. And BBC Radio 1 at that point, around about 2009 and 10, was quite a big thing to get on. Not everyone could get on there with their music. So I was happy that I kind of got to that point. And then they gave me a job there as an official job.
Wow.
At 20, which was awesome to be able to be paid to actually have that as a job. And it was a multifaceted job. So I'd be fundraising one day, I would be doing a website, I would be then teaching someone music production, I'd then be recording someone, I'd then also be doing a bit of production. So, and then sometimes songwriting, whatever they needed, I was ready to go.
Well, that must have been really cool, because then you get to have a taste of everything, and then you really figure out what you want to do and what you don't. You're like, man, I really don't like doing that.
100%. And I knew at that age exactly what I wanted to do. So I felt really lucky. Just the last few months before, when the contract was coming up to an end, it was like a year contract. I was able to kind of start to release some of my own music productions without anyone featuring as a rapper on there, that were pure electronic productions, and they were inspired by some of the Indian classical music that I'd remixed. And I ended up getting those tracks on BBC Radio 1 again, but this time it was just fully
just
myself.
You.
Exactly, yeah. Without having to rely on the rappers, felt really fulfilling.
And
I could be
validated, right?
Exactly.
It's just like they liked the music. It wasn't just because of the rappers.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And it was gave me the independence that I wanted as well, to be able to not have to rely on someone turning up half an hour late, but just being able to just do your own thing and not have to worry about anyone.
I've been in that situation where like we're gonna record, right?
Yeah. Even saying that.
Monday, we're gonna record, right? 8:00. Okay, cool. You're gonna be here at 8:00.
Yeah.
10 o'clock rolls by, 11 o'clock rolls by.
Exactly.
Next day rolls by,
Yeah.
you get a call, you're like, oh man, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to make it.
Yeah.
That's the moment I stop messing with that person. But yeah, I've been in situations where like people let you down, man, and you're just like
all the time, right?
I tell people like, word is bond. Artists are different, man. They'll tell you they're gonna go, and then all of a sudden they don't end up showing up. So the artists that do end up showing up are the ones that I work with, man.
Exactly. Yeah, you can rely on them. Yeah. So just having someone that you can work with, that you trust, and when like I said, word is bond. My words. What was it that Scarface says? My words are like my balls, and I don't break them for anyone.
Nice. What kind of equipment do you use?
So like what, from back then or now, or?
Well, if you want to summarize like the type of equipment that you started on, and then what you're working with now.
Yes, to be honest, it hasn't changed much. It's just all a lot of it is within the software. So I started on Logic. Okay. When my music started to bubble and started to be asked to do certain things like DJ mixes, I actually didn't know how to DJ. So I was asked to deliver a DJ mix, and I was like, oh yeah, of course I can do it. I was going to get my friend to do the mix for me, but then I was
ghost
like,
mix for you.
Exactly, which happens. I actually do it for other people. But I decided to learn Ableton Live for that reason, to put together a studio DJ mix.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when it was around about the time where Logic didn't have flexi time. So it made me cross over to Ableton, and it dealt with audio in a better way, especially with flexing audio, changing the BPM. So that's when I went over to Ableton. It's around about 2011, and I just haven't gone back because it's so good for performance. So good for
it's called live.
Exactly. Yeah. I was using it to also DJ before I could learn. Before I had decks, I was using it for DJing around Europe.
Yeah.
So I was using, I thought you had a machine here, but you just got buttons that are like the machine. But yeah, I had a Native Instruments machine that was used as a controller.
Oh, yeah.
That was controlling Ableton Live. So it looked different. So I was able to get a few gigs around UK and Europe, based off my music as well. And then my setup hasn't really changed since. I use some bits of Outboard, but not really. To be honest, none. I like working fully within the box. There's a lot of artists that do, music producers that do the same thing.
What plugins do you use? Or virtual instruments?
Well, when I was teaching a electronic music academy, we had to keep we had to do a lot of things within Ableton.
Mm-hmm.
So it really did show me the power of Ableton's internal plugins. But before then, I was like trying to get every plugin.
Yeah.
But once you learn the main core plugins that Ableton gives you, there's not loads of things that you kind of need, because you put saturation and a little bit of redux together, then you're going to create like a distortion effect that this other thing is going to give you. Yeah. So I say for all my students that I'm teaching, don't go out and buy loads of plugins when you're first starting, because you can do everything most likely with the plugins that you've got. But now I use, plugin wise, I use obviously Contact for a lot of the sound libraries for film stuff, and things that come to mind that I've started to use recently is this Sketch cassette plugin, which makes things sound like they're VHS-y. I used to use another VHS emulator.
Yeah, with
the hiss, but I don't use the hiss within it because I like to control that manually. So as soon as I open up my Ableton project file, there's like things going already. So the hiss, so I feel like I'm listening to a vinyl.
Okay.
And then there's also like birds tweeting, so I feel like I'm not in a sterilized place. I feel like I'm in a jungle. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm already on a vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Why Ableton? I mean, you kind of talked about like the versatility of live, but why not go to Pro Tools?
Oh yeah, Pro Tools is not at that point as well. 2011. Pro Tools, and still now, it's more for recording, right? It's for professional like recording and film composing a bit. Well, not more than a bit, a hell of a lot. But yeah, it's not creative. Ableton feels creative, even though most people when they first see it would rather work with Logic.
Yeah, because of the interface.
Exactly.
The interface of Logic is really like you get to see the compressors and
exactly. Yeah. You can see a little bit of the gain reduction with the Ableton compressors, but yeah, just the UI is just it's polished, but it comes at a price, in terms of you have to have a powerful computer. And even when I've jumped back on Logic for a few projects, I've been underwhelmed by how little it's progressed in terms of how when you hit play, there's still a bit of a gap. Yeah. I like to hit play and it's there. Do you know what I mean? Like instant rather than...
Yeah, what interface do you use?
Yeah.
Or...
Oh, audio. I actually have like the worst interface in the world. My audio interface, I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to plug them because it's the worst interface, but it's cheap interface.
Yeah.
I've obviously worked with great interfaces. I've been in some incredible studios where other people have got great interfaces like the Apollo, which I love, with all the UAD plugins that do sound great and that I've used on mixers when we've taken it from Ableton with the stems and then...
Sure.
Yeah, so I do, I really do love that Apollo, and you can hear the conversion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
but that's what I work with.
I can't see it here, but it's I will upgrade my equipment, at some point, but sometimes you have to think at the level I'm at, right? It's either you get the Apollo interface or you have a month longer to create and see where that creation can take you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to make decisions on like how you're going to do that. I mean, that leads me to my next question. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like you keep on like just leading me into my next question.
Oh, nice.
What are some like obstacles that you faced like being a music producer?
Yeah, so many. Yeah, I mean, especially when I was learning, obviously in that environment at the community recording studios, I think just from being white, maybe someone wouldn't take my beats seriously, so I had to just continually make decent music that I'd be taken seriously. So that was an obstacle. Getting on Radio 1 was an obstacle, and then there's so many obstacles in the way. At every point, there's like you could give up at any point.
Sure.
But I think the worst obstacles are the financial hardships that you get, and seeing your other friends who haven't gone down the music path. You start to see them thrive and go up the career ladder, and also start to generate wealth. That is one of the hardest things, because I want to be able to have a good life as well.
Sure.
And I've just put lots of time into my music, where other people,
like sweat equity.
Exactly. Yeah. And when other people were going out, I was making music. I made a huge sacrifice. But I work with a composer in India called Ilaiyaraaja, who's like a god, and they've flown me out. I've worked with them, and they also had to make the sacrifice of not seeing family. There's always a sacrifice that you have to make, and my sacrifice was obviously that, and then continually I've got a family now, so I've got a son, and I still have to figure out that way of trying to find the next project that's gonna sustain me. I'm not at a point where I could just relax, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, you're always on hustle mode.
Exactly. You have to be, even as a business owner like yourself, and as a music producer, you are a business owner. So you have to know the business, you have to be ready to think about the next project, and then obviously execute that project like you're doing, putting in the hours, making that sacrifice. But yeah, that's the main obstacle, is the financial hardships that have come with music and not being a superstar, and obviously not having hits. So if you have hits, then I think you're in it, but you're still, I've got a lot of friends who've got hits, and the guy in India, he's got so many hits, and you're always going to be striving anyway, and there's always going to be obstacles in whatever journey you go through. But obviously just, when you're comparing your life, in terms of like, oh, this person's traveling around, this person is looking like they've got an easier life than the hustle. I started to think, oh, maybe I should have had a backup plan. That isn't maybe like working in a bar job, which is, I don't think that's a clever, smart move. Obviously I thought I could have a bar job and then I would be blowing up, because my ego was big. I'd had certain points where it was looking like it's going to tip over and I was going to go up, but then things went like that, up and down. Yeah,
the ebbs and flows of being a creative.
Exactly. But if I had maybe a backup plan. But I did hear this quote that inspired me from Will Smith. Plan B detracts from plan A. So that stuck with me as well. And
then the other thing is the thief of joy is comparison.
Yes, yeah, which is true.
Like if you start looking at the other side, your neighbor's lawn, and you're like, man, their lawn looks great.
Yeah.
It'll not make you appreciate what you've learned.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't be bothered about a lawn, but yeah, I'd be bothered about the paycheck. The paycheck, and then the quality of life.
Sure.
Yeah, but like I said, it does give you, and everyone's on their own path. You really can't compare your life to someone else's path, right?
For sure.
And I was able to speak with my dad about, imagine if I'd not gone down the music path, I would have thought, oh, I'd really sold out. If I'd just gone and got a corporate job, or one of these great jobs that you have in the US where you make lots of money, I would have looked back and been a bit upset that I'd followed the money rather than the passion. So either way, I can't fully win. But
disappointed.
I think, yeah.
I mean, the podcast, right? It's like it's talking about the alternative of a 9 to 5, right?
Yeah,
and some people are geared towards being a worker their whole life, and it's just like not really striving for more. It's like, but then there are people who have taken that leap, but also taking that leap is very dangerous, right? Or like is intimidating, because there are lots of ebbs and flows, like you're talking about. There are ups and downs, and you got to kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah.
But I think that being a creative gives you a self-fulfilling sense that, you know, like you were saying, like if you were stuck behind a cubicle, I don't know if you would be as content with what you're doing. I mean, I imagine going to the United States, checking out all these cities in the United States, hearing about what it's like, has to be like incredibly inspirational. And like, you're like, wow, like you're experiencing things that not many people get to experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't have probably been able to take the time off if I was in a traditional setup with an employer. Although a lot of the previous scholars have had their employer supporter. I'm a self-employed, music producer and community arts practitioner. So everything that I do is, all on me. I dictate my time, and yeah, like you said, there's ebbs and flows for sure, but that is something that is also good, for instances like this where I can take time off. As long as I've done well in certain projects, I can, schedule certain projects to happen when I get back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then who are your biggest supporters, just to give them flowers?
Probably the director. He comes to mind straight away. I think in music, sometimes if you only have one fan that's in a high up position, it can change your life, right? So I think biggest supporters are the director who I mentioned earlier, Gille Klabin from Hollywood. He heard my first body of work when I was 21 called Enter the Void when he was at university, right? And he used to play it and think, he told me this recently, like, what is this? This is crazy. It's such a mixture of different styles, and it's from dubstep to a whole bunch of other stuff. And then also a manager in India who manages the composer. Mm-hmm. And we've just worked on various different projects together. But obviously he's called Saram from Mercury Management, and they manage the global superstar Ilaiyaraaja. And we've done, loads of great projects together that's really showed me that the dream is so close. I was able to be in the dressing room with the maestro, we call him, Ilaiyaraaja, before he goes to perform in India, in Chennai. Wow. To a huge packed audience. And then I was able to see that in Paris as well. So these people have supported me along the way. They've, handed me projects. I also, pitched projects of remixing his work, and then I was able to get it on Apple, not Apple Music, Apple Advert. So I was able to kind of show that some of my ideas mean something as well, and they were obviously able to see that and obviously feel that from the financial kick that we got with my contacts. But those two come to mind. But along the journey, I've had so many great people. Without those people, and I've been that for other new artists as well, mm-hmm. and new young people, because that's how I think I want to give back, is that way, because that's what some people have done for me. Along the way, there's so many people,
What about like, is your partner like super supportive?
Yeah, I think she's supportive. Yeah, she
family. Or?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think my parents kind of left me to my music journey. They didn't push me too much in that route. I think with my son, I'm going to be there to push him a bit more. From what I've seen with my friend,
yeah,
I'm going to be on his case. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be strict. Not as strict.
How old is he?
Yeah, he's 2.5. But as soon as he starts to see, I'm going to start, implement those things to get him to visualize, to train, mind, body, and soul. So even if, like with myself, I train in the gym purely for music. So I'm not stiff, because when you're editing, like, right, mm-hmm. video, or you're editing music, or you're creating music, usually you're here just on your mouth.
Yep.
And that position is not good for you. That's going to give you problems with your shoulders. And I've got
sure.
rolled shoulders, and this is
me last night.
this is what I'm
All
saying.
night.
So this is why I go to the gym. You know, you got to stay active. It's going to give you more energy when you're in the studio as well. So this is why I also go to the gym. But yeah, that's kind of that. If that kind of answers the question.
Yeah. What has it been like to build your music in England as a music producer? Like what's the music scene like? Like how have you been able to get on BBC One? What has that journey been like?
The music scene, specifically where I'm from in Nottingham, was a great, like I said earlier, like a cultural melting pot for myself. Bands, rappers, producers. It was a beautiful place to grow up. Really, really great. And then I moved to London when I was like, I think 22 or 23. And that sense of community I always tried to find within electronic music, but I never found it. So Nottingham has a real strong sense of community, and that was a great place to grow up within the music scene. But yeah, like I said, yeah, London didn't have that, because when you're going to London or somewhere like LA, maybe a little bit of Chicago, if you're not earning a certain amount, then you're working, right? And then you get home from work and you might not, you know, because I've had part-time jobs along the way of the journey. Bad part-time jobs, good part-time jobs. I worked in a sofa shop and won salesperson of the last 6 months or so. But that was a real good part-time job. And then I also had a incredible teaching job along the way that helped me kind of stay creative, and actually helped me learn Ableton more than, you know, because
you're teaching how to use it, so you have to learn how to use it too.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I knew it, but it wasn't until I started teaching that I actually knew that I actually had to learn more, and actually had to say it, how to explain it, how to hear it, and how to, so that was definitely a great place. But I think if you're not in London, probably same as LA, if you're not making a certain amount, then you can't go and experience the events. You can't go connect with the people. And, you know, I've been with my partner for a long time, so I wasn't interested in going to too many nights and staying up late. You know, a lot of people who do that are usually single, right? So that was not me. So I think the music... That's interesting
because I mean, I'm in that place too, right? Like I want to be able to share, but then the other thing is like, I can't stay up until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night.
Exactly. You got kids, right? So they'll be up at 6:30, and then...
But even before I had kids, I couldn't.
Oh, you couldn't?
You know
yeah.
Like I was just like...
Yeah, same here. Yeah, that wasn't in me either.
Yeah.
It takes a certain...
And there's a lot of craziness that happens around that time. You know, you end up in a table with like, everything that you would want on the table. And everybody's sharing, and it's just like...
Yeah.
Wow, this is not my scene. You know?
Exactly. Yes. I don't take any like those drugs as well. So again, it kind of separates you from the electronic music world. But the people who've done well are some of my friends who've networked and climbed up ladders. They have been very sociable people. So again, that's something that maybe I would have said to myself, going back to your other question, what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah.
I'd say to my 20-year-old self, because I'm 34 now, like maybe just try and go out a little bit more. But I was also concentrated in making the next body of work.
Yes.
And you can't make the next body of work if you go into the club.
Yes.
And
it's a big waste of time. Like TV is.
Yeah. Exactly.
If you're watching too much TV or video games.
Exactly.
Kill your life.
Exactly. I find video games so addictive. So that's why when the new GTA came out 10 years ago, I just watched the whole storyline so I could just say, no, I'm not going to play this because that's too addictive. I can't touch it. Do you know what I mean? So I had to do the stuff. Yeah.
I bought the PS3.
Oh, shit.
Man, but when it was like, it was cool to have the PS3, right?
Yeah.
And so that summer, I didn't do anything. I was playing Mortal Kombat.
What summer was that?
2010.
10. Oh, damn.
Mortal Kombat. What else was the God of War? All the like shooter games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, I was totally like that summer just melted away.
Exactly.
And once I figured that out, I was like, yo.
Yeah.
So then people started reading up on like the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, and I don't know what number they're on. But there was like, that was the moment where I was like, yo, I got to stop messing with this because it's just messing my creative spirit up. But
100%.
Talking about that, like, what's your creative process? Like, how do you get yourself started?
Oh, it's different every time, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, so let me know how different it might be.
Yeah, there's no one set way, but I mean, I've been in the studio while I was in LA with a producer who's actually from Nottingham, who moved out to LA, created some ideas. So this time we started with myself on guitar. Usually I'll be on guitar and then on the software and kind of jump between the two. Sometimes I won't use guitar, but I came up with some riffs and ideas, and then he processed them. But like when I'm creating at home in my studio, it's a separate studio. That's because I got a city center studio now, which is great to have work and life just separate in terms of because then obviously my son can't come in and just be like, and then just take me on a tangent.
True.
And you don't get that way, that you don't feel bad. So that was great, but it's not possible in some places like that. That wouldn't have been possible in London for me at that point, but in Nottingham right now, it's possible financially.
Sure.
So anyway, that's so my process is mainly.
And like the specifics of like, do you meditate? I mean, you told me it was different, or do you like light candles, whatever? Yeah, no. How do you get yourself started? Like,
inspiration is the key though. Yeah, so whatever you have to do to get yourself inspired. I think if you're inspired, you're usually going to make better music, right? So I've gone to the studio and been uninspired and still created some interesting ideas. But now I'd like to get myself a little bit inspired by certain ideas that I might think of. And I might, I brought up video before and thought, okay, how do I soundtrack this video? How do I use this almost as a starting off point to be inspired? Or I'll envision the crowd, or I'll maybe remake a beat and then change some things.
Okay.
Or I'll do a cover where I isolate a vocal. With the use of AI now, but back, when I first started, I was using EQ and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But by working with a cappella, sometimes you have a bit of a framework and can help the process.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you play with the guitar so that you can get some melodies. Yeah,
as another way for sure as well. Yeah, I've gone back to that more, especially when I've done community projects this year. I worked with one of my favorite community projects that happened at a time which was very pivotal for me as well. This is only 4 months ago as well. So
so talk to me about that. Like, I know that you've worked with disadvantaged youth.
Yes,
I don't know if that's the project that you're talking about.
You could say they're disadvantaged youth for this particular project, but I do work with disadvantaged youth across 3 different schools in Nottingham.
We'll talk about like the first project, and then I know that you were saying that this is separate. So, So talk to me about both.
Yeah, both. Yeah, so the project that I was just about to talk about that meant something to me, especially 3 months ago, is a really interesting project, and that started on guitar. So what that was a in the UK, kids who are in hospital usually they don't have too much to do if they're in long-term situations with health conditions. But in Nottingham, there's a youth club that was been open for, I don't know exactly how long, I think 30 years or 40 years, I don't fully know, maybe 25. And they are specifically for the people who are in long-term health conditions. And we were able to go in and create a song with them and kind of get them excited about music. A lot of them hadn't made music before. So we're able to show them the process, and not only that, we were able to inspire them, but also create a great song. So we created a really cool song, and that started on guitar. Started with us speaking about what it's like to be in that position. And they said it's kind of like being on a cliff edge. And this is where it resonated with me, and something else I'll speak about later.
Sure.
Because they didn't know which what was going to happen day to day. They didn't know if everything was okay.
Yeah, like youth with leukemia and like
and then different, and then some less, less bad, less detrimental kind of health conditions.
Sure.
Some people, whole array of different things.
Yes.
They spoke about that, and then I was able to kind of turn that into an emotion with my guitar. So that was a great way of starting, I think, for that, because I was instantly able to turn that, and I was able to relate to it as well, because my son, when he was in the room, they were doing the scan, and then they said, they were like looking a bit weird, and when you're doing the scan, right? You're hanging on to every single word.
Oh yeah, and then you start seeing the facial expressions, and you're just like, "What is going on, man?
Exactly.
Like, just be honest with me. Like, what's going on?
Exactly.
We got to get the doctor."
And that's exactly what they said.
The doctor, and then the doctor comes a half hour later.
Yeah.
You're already on pins and needles.
There you go. That's exactly what it was. But then they said, your son's going to be very poorly. This is when he was in the room.
Yeah.
Then they put us into this sterilized, horrible room. We had to wait for about another half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then tears just started to flow from myself. And then we're obviously thinking the worst, especially because what the lady said, he's going to be very ill. And then we find out after, a few months of like pain and just not knowing, that he had a cyst on his lung.
Mm-hmm.
We had to find that out by me putting him to sleep, because my partner couldn't do it, as in they had to put the mask over him to do a CT scan. And the first 3 CT scans failed. So again, you're on the cliff edge of not knowing what's going on.
Wow.
And anyway, he goes to sleep, and then he find out he's got a cyst on his lung and an extra artery going into his lung.
For sure.
So it makes you appreciate, also the parents of these people in the youth club that are on the cliff edge as well. They don't know what's going to happen to their own kid, and that's terribly like exhausting and emotionally draining. But anyway, so my son goes into the hospital, and they operate on him after 2.25 years of not knowing. He has a successful operation. He's only in there for 4 or 5 days, bounces back.
Perfect.
And it's just a great end to the story for myself.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you appreciate the fact that you have a healthy child, right?
100%. So he was healthy even when he had this thing, is to help him when he's 40.
Yeah.
But I was able to they were talking about these issues before I knew when the hospital date was. Yeah. So I was like, I couldn't tell them how much it resonated with me.
Yeah.
And these kids who just have been in and out of hospital their whole life.
Yeah, and so we've had a guest on the podcast named Navarro, and so he is a MC.
Yeah,
and he had a blood disorder.
Whoa, which one?
Man, right now off the top of my head, I could not tell you.
Yeah,
but we could go back on the podcast and like figure it out. But he was saying that he was in and out of the hospital, and his parents were freaking out, and he was bleeding, and they finally operated on him and did like I don't want to speak without knowing what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
But in the podcast, he explains this process that was new that they did, and he was healed. And so from him being like the student that went to school that would be absent 3 days out of the week because he would get sick again, to becoming like a healthy person that didn't have that ailment anymore. He's like, yo, I appreciate things, and life makes me like, he's like, I'm a go-getter now. Like, I know that life is finite and that I need to do this. So that was his resolution for like some of the stuff that he was going through as a young person.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it's good that his story was able to end in a health issue wise in a positive way.
Yes,
and that he's got all the positives from it, because we immensely appreciate our life, our parents' life, our son's life, and it's just a wake up call for, like I said, it's not, we're not going to be around forever, so you have to make the most of it, and just definitely changed me in so many ways, for sure. Yeah.
So how do you incorporate young people, and like how have you how do you work with the young people in the hospitals that you were talking about? Like, what do you just bring your computer, speakers, and like your guitar?
Yeah, we did start on guitar, but even before that, we were able to gain samples from them. So we didn't know these people before we came in, so we wanted to develop, interest in just a real relationship. So the first thing wasn't to go in the studio; it was to collect the samples, and in fact, before then, we had a real good chat with them before we even did any music. And then the next step was not to go again deep into the music, was to collect samples. So we collected them banging on the door, banging on the table.
Nice.
As videos as well.
Word.
Yeah.
Like a Beat Street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
With the drop of the water.
Exactly. Yeah.
Word. That's cool.
A whole bunch of like cool samples. And then we didn't use those until later on in the track. So then the next week we sat down with guitar and we spoke about the emotions. I translated that to a riff. Yeah. And then with the riff, a lot of them didn't have experience with coming up with melodies. So I helped them with some melodies, and then they came up with some other melodies themselves. Once there's one melody there, they were able to add some others. So then they were able to attach the lyrics to the melody. And on that week, we had just the verse done. Then we made the chorus. And then I brought my laptop in and started to record the guitars. Well, I did the guitars at home, so they have something to work with straight away. And then started to record the vocals straight away. A lot of them hadn't practiced or hadn't been in a studio environment, and we were recording in the youth club with my mobile setup. So we had a laptop, a mic, like one on the side here, and that's it. And there's the same mic that I've used when, like 10 years prior, I'd got on Radio 1 with a super cheap Rode NT2A mic.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a great mic, and we're just able to get that recorded, and then we were able to incorporate the samples. And then some people were there one week, and then some people weren't there. So the new people, we weren't able to get them on the second verse singing. And a lot of them hadn't sung before or but the song turned out really well. And then on the last week, we did a video for it. So I've got like a cool camera. I was able to film them. It was like all shot in about half an hour.
Nice.
And I edited it, and then.
And that's the orchestra one.
That's not the orchestra. That's that was the NUH youth service.
Okay.
Yeah, in Nottingham, next to the QMC hospital, with the people from the QMC hospital in Nottingham. But the orchestra that you're talking about is the Able Orchestra.
Able Orchestra. Man, there's a jam in there that I immediately gravitated to.
So yeah, the Able Orchestra are made up of, a whole bunch of interesting people and disabled musicians from all different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So the project that you were potentially listening to was a project that I produced for 4 of the people within the orchestra. Mm-hmm. Which one was the one you?
Man, I can't think of it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If I listened to it, I could. Yeah, I think I was jamming outside. I don't know.
Well, that's a crazy story with that particular track. So yeah he's DJ Dobra is in a motorized wheelchair, and he can only create music sometimes with just a mouse sometimes. But that particular track, he was really great at showing me exactly what he wanted. So he was able to kind of say something, and I would then make it for him, and then he would decide if it was good. So these people have great ears, but they wouldn't necessarily always be able to jump on the software and create like lots of tracks.
Yeah,
they usually work in collaboration with people. So it's great to be able to give them the songs that they can then potentially use as ammunition to go to the radio station or do performances. So one of the other artists on that project is a girl called Jess Fisher, and that's the first time that she's ever sang. So she's produced tracks, and she kind of gigs a bit. And BBC said that she's one of the new emerging artists of, I think, 2023. And yeah, so she's really talented. But I was able to kind of push her to expand her skills as an artist as well and sing. And yeah, she came up with some real good vocals as well.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And during the pandemic, how did
Yeah.
the pandemic affect the work that you were doing, that you were creating
Yeah.
for yourself and that you were doing with the young people?
Yeah, it was. I was this close, right, to getting close to my favorite artists. So the pandemic massively affected myself because I was that close to getting MIA on a feature. Yeah, so MIA is a huge artist in the UK and obviously globally.
Yeah,
But
I know, man.
Exactly. Yeah. So she had sampled Ilaiyaraaja, the composer I work with, like 3 times, and I presented this project with Ilaiyaraaja. That's a whole story in itself, and ended up working with him on some songs and films. He's flown me out, and we've done some little bit of scoring stuff and a whole bunch of interesting projects. And then I was able to kind of do the project that I pitched with him called Ilaiyaraaja Reimagined. So the goal with the project was always to, get artists on the project, which we actually didn't end up doing. So we sent the project to MIA, and MIA started writing to the music, her assistant said, and she just wanted to link up with Ilaiyaraaja to see that the project was real, because she didn't know me. And I was due to link them up, and then unfortunately COVID happened, right? So no travel was going on. So the Maestro's concert got cancelled.
Wow.
I was going to bring them together. She'd already wrote to it. So she was just wanted to see it was real.
Yes.
And then, now it's not happened. So that massively affected that particular project.
That door just
Exactly.
closed.
And as a 16-year-old, hearing her music was so unique. It was electronic music, obviously inspired, and she was using samples. For me, I called them Indian samples, but I didn't know at the time it's like a South Indian sound, Tamil sound,
Okay.
because it was completely alien to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And still is like alien culture. Even though I'm in it with one of the biggest composers, it's not as like I probably know more about hip hop than a Tamil music, even though I kind of make some Tamil. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you.
Because I come from that Western background. But yeah, so that massively kind of slowed that, and that was the dream. But I know there's going to be opportunities to do something again with her.
For sure,
yeah.
man. And I mean, you're already in her head in some way.
In
You
some
just
way,
have to like bring it back up. Like,
Got
do you
to.
remember we were about to make something and blah blah this?
Yeah, well, she wrote to it.
Yeah.
It's not like she was about to write.
So she'll know.
Exactly. So she might even know the lyrics.
Yeah. So you just got to run into her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's going to be hard because, I know that there's going to be another opportunity. But it was so convoluted how I had to get to her. I had to go ask.
Yeah, you had to go through like gatekeepers.
5 different gatekeepers, but they all let me through. Got to assistant. And then, I didn't even know her name was Maya until I spoke to her assistant. I thought her name was Mia. And my partner's name is Mia as well.
Oh, okay.
But her name, Mia, is just missing in action, isn't it? So, because I was a fan of her music, but with all the people I'm a fan of, I don't dig super, super, super deep.
Sure.
Because I'm deep in my own, music.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one way it massively affected it. And then another way is it kind of actually gave me a bit of breathing space. So the UK government were, for myself at that particular time, they were quite helpful. So based on your previous earnings, they would give you like almost like a payout for the fact that everything had dried up, especially with my work. So I was able to create a body of work and a few bodies of work, a project with an artist in Nottingham called Louis Scott. And I was able to like practice I soundtracked 4 different films.
Mm-hmm.
I'd made a whole bunch of music for a project with the director in Hollywood that he would listen to as he's editing the script. Worked with different projects for him. So I was able to like have breathing space to work on more creative
And how long
projects.
did the government pay you out?
I think it was only a year.
Man,
Yeah, which is great.
That sounds
Imagine
great, man. We got like a $5,000 check. They were like, okay, thank you.
Exactly. And out here, that doesn't last, right? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Everything's about pull yourself up from your bootstraps, but they don't realize that like some people have bootstraps and some people don't.
Yeah.
And so in the United States, it's very like, you have to have grit, you have to have this, and it's just like homeless people are really disrespected. There's a culture of, I'm gonna get what I need, and you know, if you don't get what you need, then that's on you. You know, and so I mean, it's like it's definitely not like a socialist frame of mind.
That's crazy, because what I've experienced so far has been the opposite, but that's due to the worlds that I'm in at the moment, you know.
Sure.
I'm in the service organizations and a whole bunch of other the kindness I've seen here is I've not seen this kind of kindness but again, I think that's my position and what the circles I'm in.
Maybe
for sure.
Maybe for the average person. For the average person. So I mean, you see how they bail out these banks.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. But then when something like this happens, it's like they're like even regretting giving you $5,000.
No way.
They're like, and you know that they have the income. Like, it's, imagine if you had a parent.
Yeah.
And they kept on telling you no.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, okay, you can buy the toy.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, I shouldn't have bought them the toy, because now they're going to want more toys. You know? And so that's what it's like to be in the United States. The government is, and then you have two factions. You have the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Republicans want to cut all, what do you call it? Any aid in general, right?
Yeah.
They're just like, you're out on your own. But then you have these Republican governors that live in southern states where they have hurricanes and stuff like that. And as soon as they get hit with a hurricane, they're like, oh my God, we need help. We need aid.
Yeah.
But it's like a week before you were talking about the states are leeching off of this thing and we should stop funding and all of this.
That's crazy.
So it's a polarity here that we have in the United States where it's like, it's like you're out on your own. Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah. Which is good in some aspects. You know, when you compare it to the UK, there's a lot of people that take advantage of the system, and there's not an overflowing amount of money, obviously, but there's a balance to be had, and not everything's black and white. And I think, the government in the UK is interesting. I've had to learn a lot about current affairs for the scholarship, and it's the more I've looked into it, the more I just do feel like it's on me to, even in the UK where it's a little bit more socialist in some ways.
Because like here, the middle class is we're losing the middle class.
Yeah,
right?
I heard that.
And so there's the haves and then the have-nots. And the have-nots are living check to check.
Yeah.
And so if they lose their job, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage or rent, right? And so, and so it's just like, I have this money, it's my money.
Yeah.
And if you don't have money, then you don't have money.
Yeah.
You better figure something out.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. There is, and then there's the welfare queen. Which is like the characterization of like black people leeching off of the system. But when you actually like get down to it, you see that most of the people that are on welfare are white, and they're from rural areas, right? But then when you think of welfare, what we've been taught to think of welfare is a black woman that would in the past would have lived in the projects, that is not working, that is just collecting this check.
Yeah.
So it's like this warped way of seeing things that we've been taught. And so those are the things that when you were talking about like racism and checking yourself, it's like those are the things that as a young person you're taught that you have to like check yourself consistently and be like, yo, why am I thinking this way?
Yeah.
This is not a good way to think. And so because we've all been kind of put in this hierarchy ladder, and if you're above somebody else, you're supposed to feel good that you're at least above somebody else. but it also diminishes your mind and your quality of thinking.
100%. Yeah, the world is getting to a crazy place right now, and somehow it's got these two opposites have to come together in some way, right?
But
yeah,
all right, back to you. What's your goal in making your music, man?
I have been able to help people through music. I have been able to create opportunities and, you know, create a lifestyle for myself. And I think the goal is to, at this point, I've got, you know, heavy goals, which I've ticked off a few of those since I was, you know, when I put them on my wall when I was 20. But I'm still not that close to all those goals. So I want to be ticking those off. One of those goals is to have a yacht, right? But it's more, I don't think I would want a yacht. I just want the opportunity to continually create and be creative and help others. That's my two goals, while, you know, being a dad and being a great partner, helping the community in some way. That's my main goals. But yeah, obviously I want to venture more into Hollywood scoring. I want to get some hits under my belt, because that was the goal as a 14-year-old. It wasn't really to score movies. I wanted to do that like 20 years after I had hits, but I'm actually doing that now and haven't had hits. So I still want hits, just to have songs that move people, that push the envelope of, you know, electronic music in some small way that sparks a bit of a trend, maybe a bit of a genre. And then, you know, I educate people. So I want to continue doing that, because that's very rewarding. It's a great way to pass on your skills, and then, you know, help people informally through community music projects. That's mainly what I want to do, and continue being creative. Now venturing into video using DaVinci Resolve, you know, color grading footage, and I've just got a camera that I got last year, and being able to not really touch it too much, but I've created educational content with it. And just I'm seeing that as the next evolution of my artistry. I'm about to launch a new artist project called For Noah. So I've collected a lot of music since my son is born. My son's called Noah, but the project's called like 4 as in the number, and then N-O-A, because his name's spelled Noah like that. Yeah. So yeah, I've refrained from dropping music for a long time, because I want to make a project that I'm really proud of. You know, when I was younger, I would release music that maybe, you know, you just want to get it out there. Now I want to make a new project. So when you hear this project, like Gucci Mane, you know, you'll hit play and you'll know what you're getting. Yeah. You're not going to...
Quality.
It's quality, but it's all the same. I want it to, like, because I want to tap into an emotion with it. So you go into this artist that I do for this emotion, whereas all my other music is, you see me grow. It's almost like a diary entry. And one day you're feeling this way, and the next day you're feeling chilled. So my music's like that, which some people, you know, have said that they like. Some cool people, the variety, right? But I think in this day and age, as I'm not fully established as an international artist, so I can't kind of do that. I want to start from scratch with a new project, and so I'm just I've collected a whole bunch of tunes for it. You know, had some interesting opportunities and interest already, but I think the key is to just make a real good body of work that resonates with me. And I've already got that with a whole bunch of remixes, covers, and songs. But you know, I really want to refine the sound and just make sure it's perfect, along with the presentation. So make sure everything is perfect. So making sure that the visual aesthetic works fully with the music. So that's my goals. Yeah.
And then if you had like a child or a kid that wanted to get into electronic music, or wanted to get into your field of like even helping, you know, disadvantaged youth, like what would you tell them?
I would say, obviously, you know, I was lucky to be in an environment that not everyone's going to have. There's some incredible organizations in Chicago that you're probably all aware of, like United Voices Chicago, the People's Music Studio, or People's Music Club, and a whole bunch of others that I've been able to connect with since I'm here. But there's not always an organization like that in your area, or so you can do what I did when I was 20, which is to learn online and get yourself to a good point where you can create music. But you have to learn how to learn, which is kind of strange, right? You have to learn how to concentrate and to try different things. And that's a process. Some adults can't do it. They, certain people message me and they want me to show them how to do certain things. Only a few people who aren't like maybe in the space, but everything's there, like, and on YouTube. And all you need to know is, I guess, how to ask the right questions. AI is quite useful with that as well, because you might not know like where, like even what a play button is. So you could then say to AI, how do I make something play in Ableton? And then so with the use of AI and then YouTube, you're in a position that you almost have like a one-to-one session with someone who's going to show you the ropes, which I had, and it's going to be more
cool, man.
Yeah, that's how I'd recommend to do
using AI.
Yeah, and then when it comes to like, helping other people, I do think that you have to help yourself before you help other people. For sure. Even though like I was young and showing people how to record, even though I'd only been recording for like a month or two, you have to at least, know how to done it a little bit before you know what I'm saying. But once you've got your skills up to a good level and you might have some credits or certain things you've done, people are going to take what you're saying a little bit more seriously, and you're going to be able to potentially get funding to do certain projects. So everyone wins, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how a lot of these organizations that have been going on for ages, that's what they do. It's a win-win for everyone.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then what do you want to leave with your music? What do you want to leave with your music when, I guess, past your lifetime? Like, what do you want to leave with your music past your lifetime?
That's a great question. So I think I want people to feel the power of imagination, which is, that sense of you can imagine something and then you could try your best to create it, and then you can be transported. That's what I want people to be transported with my music. But I also want them to have fun, with my music, especially my new music. It's like dance music, but UK garage. So that's the main thing, is to really have fun and be inspired by the sounds, and also like thrown off by the sounds. Like, oh, that sounds strange. You know what I'm saying? Different. I love the idea of fusion music when I was younger. So fusing certain things together is a great way to make something new. And Daft Punk, a whole bunch of people have done that with this. They did it with disco and electronic music and house. And I want to bring together worlds and create something new. So that freshness, which you experience as a kid, that's what I want people to experience. When I listened to MIA, she was bringing rap, electronic, and these genres within like electronic music, specific genres all together. Sounded really cool. It looked really cool. So it just felt new. And that's what I want. I want people to be inspired by the project.
Cool. And then how can people reach out to you?
So people can reach out to me mainly through my website. It's the simplest way. And then from there, I've got all my links to like TikTok and Instagram. So my website is www.kirkspencer.co.uk. So that's KIRK and then SPENCER.co.uk, because obviously from the UK. So that's, you can reach out to me, hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on TikTok.
What's your handle? Is it just
my new handle is for the new artist project. So I've kind of like I've released music under my own name for the longest period, but the new, the next 10 years it's going to be releasing under this new alias.
Okay. And
the handle for everything is For Noah Music. So for the number and then NOA and then music.
Cool.
Yeah, across all the socials.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for making it out to the 500 and Growing podcast.
I appreciate it. And I think it's great what you're doing, showing people how you need to keep pushing, through the trials, tribulations of not having a 9-to-5, and giving people the hope, because the little glimmers of hope that you get along the way, that you're going in the right direction, is key.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for making it.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're the 500 and Growing podcast. We're produced by Where You At Productions. You can go to the website whereyouatproductions.com. It's a mobile production company that features or specializes in podcasts, master classes, and streaming events. And please go to www.500andgrowing.com and visit Kirk in his on his website. And thank you very much for making it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
And we're out. Peace.
Cheers.
500 and growing.
Podcast. Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Dedicated to your craft, read and study the math. Making goals and taking a stand. Original, so you trailblaze a path. In tune with your inner master plan.
Visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
Thank you very much for listening to the 500 and Growing podcast. Remember that we have incredible guests that have already featured in episodes in the past. So please go back into the archives and listen to their inspirational stories. And then remember that we have incredible guests lined up for the future. So please follow on Instagram at 500 and Growing Podcast. Remember to follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the major podcast platforms. You can also check out 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.